Hello and welcome to Safe Pasture. My name is Sherry Hammers and I'm so glad you've joined me for the second episode of this little series that we're doing in the From the Heart series. But we are talking about Isaiah 40 and this is a word of encouragement for the days that we're living in. Last time we left off at around verse 6, 7, and 8 in Isaiah verse 40 because we were talking about the grass withering and the flower fading. The word of the Lord stands forever. And we talked about how the grass is the flesh and the flower is the goodly part of the flesh. And that God, the reason it withers is because and fades, excuse me, because the Spirit of the Lord blows upon it. Surely the people is grass, is what it says in verse 7. And here's the contrast, not just between people and grass of the field, but I believe God's making a distinction between blowing on the people. He says, surely the people is grass. Well, that is because I think he's talking about the people of the world. I could be wrong. I didn't think about this till I just started talking about it. But the grass is saying, on the one hand, we've got these people that are doing evil in the world. And when I read this, I saw it as the people that are big time carrying on the evil that's swirling around us right now in our world. But it says that the grass withereth, the flower fadeth, but the word of our God shall stand forever. So I believe what God is pointing out here is you're looking around and you see all of these wicked people that seem to be gaining power and doing destruction in this world. And it looks rather hopeless because God's saying at the beginning of this chapter, he's saying, comfort my people. He's saying to the prophet, speak these words of comfort to my people. And then it says that he's blowing on the grass and it fades. And I believe God is speaking to those people that are perpetrating evil in this world, and there's no real indication that they're turning away from it. And God is contrasting that he's in power over these people. They are but grass to him. He can blow on them and they wither. Even their goodly things like the flower, he can blow on that and it fades. Okay, so he's wanting his people to take comfort in the fact that he is their God and his word stands forever. Moving on to verse 9, it says, O Zion, that bringest good tidings, get thee up into the high mountain. O Jerusalem, that bringest good tidings, lift up thy voice with strength. Lift it up, be not afraid. Say unto the cities of Judah, behold your God. I see what he's saying. Zion is the New Jerusalem. Zion is the people of God. And he's saying, you've brought good tidings to the world. I've used you as an instrument to bring good news to the world. And he's saying, get up into the high mountain. That speaks of a shelter and a place of refuge. And then he says to Jerusalem, you've brought good tidings too. He says, lift up your voice with strength. When we're despairing and we're depressed and discouraged, we have tiny little wimpy, whiny voices that, we're just pitiful. But God's saying, no, don't slump into that mindset. He says, lift up your voice with strength. Lift it up. Be not afraid. And say to the cities of Judah, behold your God. In other words, instead of being discouraged, say to the people around you, look at your God. Put your focus on God. Behold means to look. So he's saying, look around you and tell people to look to your God. And to get our focus off of this world and get it onto God. In verse 10, behold the Lord God. Okay, so the Lord God will come with strong hand, and his arm shall rule for him. Behold, his reward is with him, and his work before him. So he's given the picture of God's not feeble, God's not weak. God's not helpless, like we're turning to him for help and he has nothing. No, God has a strong hand. He has a strong arm. His reward is with him. His work is before him. In verse 11 it says, and he shall feed his flock like a shepherd. He shall gather the lambs with his arm, and carry them in his bosom, and shall gently lead those that are with young. You know, just today, just this afternoon, a friend had sent me an excerpt that she read in a book, and one thing that struck me in that it was several paragraphs, but what struck me about it was one of the things it talked about was God being our shepherd, Jesus being the good shepherd. And a good shepherd, when the wolf comes, the good shepherd stays right there with the sheep. He stays right there and he battles the wolf and protects the sheep. It's only the hireling, only the ones that don't, their heart was never for the sheep anyway. They were just in it for what they could get out of it. But he is the good shepherd. And here it says, it's not even talking about the wolf, but it's just in the general everyday, he shall gather the lambs with his arm and carry them in his bosom, and shall gently lead those that are with young. So the same shepherd that will take the rod and staff, those are his weapons. Especially the rod was like a club to beat off predators. So God is that, we just read in verse 10 that he's got that strong hand, that strong arm to do battle for him. But here in verse 11, we see the gentleness. He takes the little baby lambs in his arm and he carries them close to his heart, and he gently leads the mamas that have the little babies. He doesn't rush them because he knows the little babies are just, they have little short legs and they're just little babies. They can't go really fast for very long. And he gently leads those that are with young. And verse 12 now, so now we see the gentle side. And in verse 12, who hath measured the waters in the hollow of his hand, and meted out heaven with the span, and comprehended the dust of the earth in a measure, and weighed the mountains in scales, and the hills in a balance? Who hath directed the Spirit of the Lord, or being his counselor hath taught him? With whom took he counsel, and who instructed him? And taught him in the path of judgment, and taught him knowledge, and showed to him the way of understanding. All right, so there we have this side of God. Yes, he's gentle enough to carry a baby lamb, but he's magnificent in strength and power. He measured the waters in the hollow of his hand. He is huge. He is huge. He's beyond our comprehension in his strength and power. And he's made the heavens, and he understands how much dust there is on the earth. I mean, he's measured it, and he's weighed the mountains in scales and the hills in a balance. This is a big God. This is a God that encompasses all and is able to handle all. He is our all in all. Then we go on to verse 13. In verse 13 and 14, we already read those, but it says that who has directed him? Like, who does God need to direct him? Who's going to counsel him? He is the top. He is the top. There's no one above him. It says, there's no God above him. Even when he took an oath with Abraham, it said he swore by himself because there was nobody higher than him to swear by. So nobody's telling him how to judge things. Nobody's sitting him down and teaching him knowledge. Nobody is showing him the way to understanding. And I'll just leave you with this in verse 15. Behold, the nations are as a drop of a bucket, and are counted as the small dust of the balance. Behold, he taketh up the isles as a very little thing. So when you look at the nations, because right now we see nations starting to rise up against nations are doing evil, and it looks like, wow, they got a lot of power. They're gaining more power. And God's like, they're like a drop in the bucket to me. They're counted as small dust on the balance. Like if you were going to weigh something and you saw a little speck of dust, I think you would be equal to getting that off of the balance. God's equal to any of this. And it says he takes up the isles. In other words, the islands. Like he could pick up an island and it's not a big deal. So we're seeing the magnitude of God and his capability of taking care of us. I think that's very, very encouraging. And we will pick up here next time. Thanks again for joining me, and look forward to seeing you next time.